Global trade is going through a rough path this year, primarily due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which has disrupted economic activities as well as life across the world. Governments have intervened with monetary and fiscal policies to counter the downturn and provide temporary income support to businesses and households, but restrictions on movement and social distancing to slow the spread of the virus means that labor, transport as well as travel sectors are today directly affected by the pandemic. Economists say that recovery could be expected by 2021, but this would depend on the duration of the pandemic as well as the effectiveness of policies. In today's edition, our guest will tell us how this situation could play out in Cameroon's trade agreements as well as internal trade dynamics. This is Hard Talk. Welcome back. Our guest is a senior trade policy advisor, a graduate of the Trade Law Center in Cape Town, South Africa, precisely in the year 2018, where he completed from that center. He holds close to 10 years experience in cross-border trade issues. Like I said, he is an expert on free trade agreements and regional integration. And just like I mentioned, an international senior policy trade advisor. Mr. Bama Etienne Cham, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, it's a pleasure having you.
It's a shared pleasure.
Yeah, there's been so much talk about the impact of COVID-19 on the global trade as a whole. How damaging has the virus been to the global trade dynamics?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. And I send out greetings to televiewers, and particularly those of Hard Talks. COVID-19 and trade, in fact, COVID-19 is an unprecedented pandemic in recent history. And when you look at the way the virus started in Wuhan, China, late 2019, December, and the measures that were taken, you understand that trade was the first hard hit through measures that were taken. For example, scientists had to work on the virus and make public the means of contamination. And that was the first point. The means of contamination, as revealed by the World Health Organization, was through human contact. And the spread of the virus was at a very alarming rate. And that has been the case till today. Countries had to keep aside international engagement to look at domestic policies on how to fight the spread of the pandemic. And the first measure was definitely to restrict movement, border closures at a global level. When we close borders, it means trade is going to face the consequences. And when we talk about trade, it is good to open up trade on two lanes, trade in goods and trade in services. You have trade in goods. Trade in goods actually continued during the pandemic, but production spots were halted due to social distancing and confinement, complete lockdowns in certain countries. So workers could not go to their industrial sites to produce goods that were traded. So those that were already in the warehouses continued to be traded, and that's why you see most airlines, they had to use their cargo aircrafts to continue to supply goods. And I think it is within this period that we as Cameroonians also benefited from the largest of Jack Ma through Ethiopian cargo aircrafts. So trade had to continue, but productions were halted around the world. In terms of trade in services, hotels, airline passenger transports, even land passenger transport were hard hit as people were restricted from movement. So trade and COVID-19, in fact, they have given a different picture of the way we have to live. And that is how trade today is shaping the world. Even coastal countries across the world, there were measures that ports took, selective measures even. There are certain vessels that could not anchor that are coming from hard-hit countries of the virus. They were restricted from anchoring. And when you restrict vessels coming from a particular country, it means goods from that country cannot move into your countries. And even some measures were set up like quarantine. You had to quarantine the crew members of a vessel for some time, and that equally impact on the port dwell time of that vessel. Return to carry another cargo. So these are some of the phases that trade has been going through as a result of the COVID-19. Even production, countries had to redirect production to produce personal protective equipment. When you look at even at our local level, most industries like those in the textile industry and garment factories had to turn to producing face masks. That was not initially their line of production. So these are the impacts of COVID-19 on trade, redirecting productions in Europe and across the world, due to the fact that other countries, even that could produce this personal protective equipment, were not able to do so en masse in order to satisfy global demand. Countries had to take local measures, domestic measures. And even there was prohibition of export. You won't imagine, in a European economic area, Germany had to prohibit the export of personal protective equipment to Italy. I'm talking about two European Union members, where there is free movement of goods and persons, and they must achieve economic integration till date. But Germany had to prohibit and restrict the sales of personal protective equipment, potential life-saving devices, to their neighboring countries. So this thing of globalization had to face some challenges, and countries were coming back to themselves. And that is the case we are still facing today.
Now, in the midst of all this, we have seen the two major economies, that's the US and China, in a very, very tense trade war. How will this shape the global trade in years to come?
Yeah, US-China trade war officially, I would say officially, started on the 5th of July 2018, if my memory is good.
Sure.
Yeah, this trade war came along with the election of Donald Trump's policy of America First. On the 6th of July, we effectively got up watching news on American channels announcing a 25% and 10% tariff imposition on Chinese steel and iron. This is looking at the fact that these are two members of the World Trade Organization, because China's accession dates back to 2001, when China fully became a member of the World Trading Governance System. And you would see that the coming of China into this global regulatory trading system gave China a large margin of maneuver. And China, you know, is a cheap factory of the world. China produces at a low cost, and before then, US was the global supplier of goods to the planet. And with Chinese accession, China had now a packet of members with whom they could trade under the WTO system. So this opened up the world to China, and China had now to compete with US. And competing with US, China could not immediately dive into producing high quality goods. They went into cheap factory production and took over markets in Latin America, Africa, Europe, and Asia. These were potentially US markets. And you wouldn't expect the US to sit down and fold. And even in 2008, there were relocation of US factories to China, where there's cheap labor, high tech but cheap. So with this, the world of 2018 was just the tip of an iceberg. And with the tariff war, it has caused a lot of trade distortion in the world. But also there are good aspects of the US-China trade war. Trade distortion in the fact that when the tariffs were imposed on Chinese iron and steel, US producers or importers of iron and steel from China had now to look for different markets. Europe became a market. But were European factories ready to produce the huge quantity demanded by US factories? They had to turn to other Asian countries. And China could not stay quiet. They retaliated on agricultural products. Because before you impose tariffs, you go into the tariff books and you go into your border data. You look at the trading where you can hit somebody's country and it feels the impact. Agriculture, because that's a very fragile sector of the US economy. They had to impose tariffs as well on US agricultural products before the January-February deal concluded between the US and China, the phase one deal. They call it the phase one deal, wherein China committed to buy much of US agricultural product in order to strike a balance of trade. Because Donald Trump's major point was the trade deficit in goods. Let us be precise here. Donald Trump was talking about trade deficit in goods.
While leaving out the services.
While leaving out the services sector, where U.S. is having a surplus over China. So now, to broker this deal, China agreed, they fully engaged to an agreement to purchase U.S. agricultural products, notably soybeans. And by doing so, it was not a new demand. That should be noted. Soybean is potentially something that China has been buying from the U.S. to feed their piggeries and other animal farming in China. Equally, pork meat imported from U.S. Those are some of the agreements that China and U.S. came together to agree that, okay, while you halt your tariff imposition on our goods, we will purchase more of this good. But unfortunately, COVID-19 came in and disrupted the whole system. And the impact of this to the global economy and the trading system is that the distortion effect had led to the rise of new industries in Southeast Asia, where the same technology is available. When you look at countries like Vietnam and Malaysia, production is rising. But this production is not rising at no cost. Raw material is still imported from China. And that's why at one moment, the U.S. Trade Representative, Robert Lighthizer, complains of transshipment. Because when you're importing raw material from China and doing the assembly in Vietnam, the rule of origin becomes a problem. Yes. The rule of origin, the origin content of the final product will still specify that that product is from Chinese origin. And that is still the problem. So how do we solve this problem? I mean, there are short, medium, and long-term consequences of such wars. Relocation of industries. Industry will definitely relocate. And that will increase if Donald Trump goes in for a second
for a second presidential term.
That is it.
Now, there are heated debates in Brussels over the past 2 years on post-Brexit trade relations between Britain and the European Union has been a major concern for trading partners. But for a country like Cameroon, what could be the impact of these heated negotiations?
Yeah, Brussels, heated debate in Brussels over the departure of
Britain from the
UK
EU.
from the EU. I will call that economic secessionist. Yes, because they are actually leaving a family where they have been for over 4 decades. And you know, such divorce doesn't go at no cost. Presently, the debate is centered on issues like a level playing ground. Remember, these economies have been integrated for so long, and investments were considering the whole EU market, EU 28, and not just, even if they were located in UK or the other side of the EU, they were considering the global market. And today, to fracture the market and tell investors that from now onward, you will need to comply with regulations of the United Kingdom, that is not an easy one. One of the topic of discussion in Brussels is a level playing ground. How will UK ensure that EU investors in UK continue to enjoy the benefits that existed during that time of investment? You also have fisheries. Fisheries is a heated debate because UK waters are fruitful in terms of fish. EU is tabling 2 options. Either you maintain the laws as they are, or you engage to sell us the catch from UK waters. UK say no, that's our sovereignty. Remember, the percentage of fish in the UK economy is just 1%, but to them it's a cultural pride. It's a cultural pride. And they are telling Brussels, you cannot dictate. That's our sovereignty. We decide what to do with our fish. Another one is sanitary and phytosanitary measures. Remember, US chicken is chlorine-washed chickens, which EU doesn't want them. So that is where the debate is coming in. The EU want guarantee from the UK that the sanitary and phytosanitary standard of the UK will be tacked on the EU standard, so that they don't import chlorine-washed chicken from the United States into the UK, not into the EU, but into the UK. Since they have enjoyed harmonized policies across the board, they want to keep it maintained. And then UK is tabling services sector. Remember, London is the capital of fintech, financial technology across the globe. The greatest part of UK business is on services. It has an important impact in the UK economy, services sector, and fintech is the bulk of it. So there are negotiations with EU. They want to maintain some degree of flexibility in terms of transferability or repatriation of profit, transferability of funds, interrelationship between banks. And that is where EU too is telling them that no, there should be some set of regulatory autonomy. And the European Court of Justice is another heated point of debate between the UK and the EU. Here, Europe won the European Court of Justice since it is the union's judicial body. The one European Court of Justice to have jurisdiction over issues negotiated by the EU. And that is logical. That is like the Supreme Court of the European Union. But UK is saying no. We want to put in place another judicial system wherein it will look specifically into our dealings. That will now be subtracting the European Union from its Court of Justice to put in place another bilateral judicial system. And the question is, what then will be the role of the European Court of Justice? So those are some of the points.
But now for a country like Cameroon, which has the Economic Partnership Agreement,
yes,
what could be the impact?
Cameroon, remember when we were negotiating the Economic Partnership Agreement with the European Union, there were EU 28, including the United Kingdom. And now with Brexit, the question is, how are we going to trade with the United Kingdom? And that is why if you've observed for the past months, the UK High Commissioner to Cameroon engaged talks with the Cameroon government on a post-Brexit EPA similar deal with the United Kingdom. And from the press statement of the UK High Commissioner to Cameroon, he even expressed his interest to go deeper than the current state of affairs with the EU, to take stock of the lapses of EPA and deepen the trade deal. And that is why some years back, I think 2 years or so, or last year, there was the UK Africa Summit to discuss on the future of trade between the United Kingdom and Africa. That was part of it, and investment modalities. So what I have in mind is that engaging a deal with the United Kingdom will put us on a better position. Because if you've been following evolution of things, already Cameroon is trying to put on a hold the third phase. Yeah,
which was supposed to kick off on August
4th of August, 2020.
And has not been effective.
Yes. So those are some of the things. For me, Cameroon will have a better leverage discussing on a bilateral perspective, a trade deal with the United Kingdom. Take advantage of the EPA failures and then work on it to have a better deal with the United Kingdom.
But are we not heading for a clash with the European Union?
With regard to the implementation of the Economic Partnership Agreement?
Yeah.
No, not absolutely. Remember, Article 31 of the agreement is clear. A member to the agreement, a state party to the agreement, can raise exceptions to the implementation, but then it must be implemented on a limited time frame. There must be a limited time, and there must be what I can call cas de force majeure. But normally when you read the article, it talks a lot about dumping. But dumping is not the only issue that can warrant a country to suspend the implementation, because they talk about causality effect, that there must be the risks due to import of a similar product from EU that is produced locally of the closure of that industry at the domestic level. But that's not the only issue. There are health challenges, there are security challenges. And when we talk about security challenges, I will bring you to one point that raised the attention. Maybe many observers did not take keen attention. In 2018, John Bolton, then National Security Advisor to George Bush, made a press statement on the future of relationship between US and Africa on trade and investment. It was the security advisor who made that statement, not the US trade representative. That tells you how trade is equally a security, national security issue. So Cameroon can raise internal security issues to put a hold. And COVID-19 is not only a health problem, but it's a national security issue. Yes. With COVID-19, there has been complete lockdown in other countries. When you lock down Cameroonians who live on a daily basis, what do you expect them to do? Crime wave.
But the EU will tell you that they are helping Cameroon to curb the pandemic. They are chipping in money to the Cameroon government, and that might make up for some of the damages.
EU advanced 18 billion francs CFA that has been granted to Cameroon as assistance to curb down COVID-19. In which form is the grant coming? Medical equipment. If it is coming in the form of medical equipment, there are people who need to eat. If imports, now that they are not producing, they are not going to their farm. Take the case of tomato. If you go to Marché Sandaga, you realize that a basket of tomato that used to sell for 8,000 francs, few weeks back was being sold for 3,000 francs.
2,000 even.
Perfect. We even heard of cases of suicide. People committing suicide due to the fact that they could not reimburse their loans from banks that were obtained basing on their business plan, tomato business, because of border closures. So now if we start importing tomato from EU and the price of tomato is dropping down, take the case of chicken. Around 2008, we had Cameroonians who went down to the street because of chicken import from EU. So these are some of the issues. Cameroon has expressed interest to put a hold on the implementation, and please, it is not the whole agreement itself. Because remember, we can't be retroactive. It was the third phase of it, okay, which was focused on a certain category of goods, and just 10% of vehicles, tourist vehicles and passenger transport vehicles, fuel, cement, motorbikes. Those are some of the products that falls within this category. And Cameroon said, please, due to the situation we are going through, we plead with you guys to suspend the implementation of the 10%. Because remember, the process warrants that the Minister of Finance formally notified the Director General of Customs that please take into consideration the implementation 4th of August each year of the 10% of phase 5, phase 4 of this. So this notification was done. I think till now, I don't know, information at my level still remains on the 12th of August, where European Union had not formally accepted or acknowledged receipt of Cameroon's
request.
Yes. So it is. I don't think there will be any conflict here. We have justifiable reasons at the internal level, and not only Cameroon. Many countries are affected by COVID-19, and while we are struggling to adapt the package that government allocated to small, medium-sized enterprises, it is not a package to solve all their problems, but to mitigate the effect of COVID-19. And our partners, EUs, we have gone into a long-term trading deal. I think they should understand, Cameroon, that our hands are tight at this moment. And once the situation comes to normal, definitely Cameroon will uplift the suspension.
All right. In November 2019, the United States decided to suspend Cameroon from the African Growth and Opportunities Act, what is commonly known as AGOA, over what Trump said was human rights abuses. Some economists in the country say that the U.S. is not a major trading partner within the AGOA. They say that the trade with AGOA accounts for just 3%, and that's insignificant. Does Cameroon stand to lose a lot from this deal?
When you look at our trade, our trade balance, when you consider 3% to be insignificant, then there is a serious problem. First of all, let's look at AGOA. What is AGOA? AGOA is a preferential trade arrangement, a unilateral preferential trade arrangement through a U.S. Congress Act that gave a franchise to goods from a certain number of countries on certain criteria of eligibility, which has an annual review, amongst which we have human rights. Human rights, you have labor legislation, you have a certain number of reforms, democracy. That is the U.S. perspective of the global system. Cameroon was suspended on grounds of human rights. A delegation was sent to U.S. to explain the situation Cameroon was facing. And remember, the context in which U.S. raised the question of human rights is a context that can be put into question. And when economists say 3% is insignificant in external trade, then there is a problem. There is a problem. Look at the sectors in which that 3% falls. and look at the impact at the domestic level, where does the 3% fall? Agriculture. Agriculture is part of the 3%.
Which is the backbone of Cameroon's economy.
That 3% can be 70% when you look at the contribution of the 3% in the national economy. We talk about cocoa and coffee export. Do you imagine the number of Cameroonians who are involved directly and indirectly in the cocoa and coffee sector? And now we have been stripped of AGOA, where our imports go into the US market duty-free. Today, imagine businesses that have placed commands for 2 years. Let's take, for example, KFC. They have placed command for coffee from Cameroon for 3 years. And just all of a sudden, they have to pay duties. Whereas the terms of negotiation were duty-free.
Duty-free.
We are not competitive again. They now switch on to Ghana or Ivory Coast to buy their cocoa. What becomes of our cocoa farmers? Look at the percentage of the population involved in the cocoa sector. So the 3% should be regarded with a lot of care, because the sector that makes up the 3% is very important. Consider the wood sector as well. Fuel, which are some of the products we trade. Aluminium. Those are the sectors in which that 3% is made up of. It is not insignificant. It is very, very important. When we talk about external trade, exports of a country, we don't neglect even 0.005%. We don't play with it, because the impact at the domestic level might be more than just that percentage we see.
But about 95% of countries within the AGOA agreement do not reap the benefits as they are supposed to. What could be the problem, and how can that be fixed?
Yes. When you look at US market, it is a complex economy. US consumers are very, very careful on what they consume. When you take a look at their consumption style, they are very keen on reading the nutritional facts or the technical description of a product. And let me assure you, AGOA was not just about trade. It was trade and investment. And that's why they created hubs. There was a West African Trade and Investment Hub located in Ghana. It is still there today. What was it all about? To build capacity of SMEs in eligible countries to trade with the US. These hubs had capacity building programs, buyer-seller matching programs, investment programs. When you look at the annual publications of these hubs, you look at sectors like Syria. When you take the case of Namibia today, Namibia is exporting beef to the US. It is attached to the Trade and Investment Hub of Southern Africa. AGOA brought US experts from the Food and Agricultural Department, the FDA, Food and Drug Administration Agency, to be precise, to come to Africa, put in place expertise who will train Africans on how to export to the US market. They give you through the value chain how you produce, how you package, how the workers in the factory should be dressed. All those were taken into consideration. When you look at Ivorian mango export in America, to American market, it has risen over the years. The case of Kenya and Ethiopia, investments have been plowed into this economy thanks to the program of AGOA. So 95% facing difficulties to make benefits of AGOA is due to the fact that first, there was no existing capacity with full knowledge of the American market entering requirement. Because in terms of sanitary and phytosanitary aspect, no economy will jeopardize the health of its citizens. And these programs were put in place to build the capacity of African businesses in over a long run to be able to make benefit. But there's one failure that I always tell people. When we meet at our AGOA forums, I always raise this problem of a permanent secretariat where they receive complaints and oversee the implementation process. There was no permanent secretariat. There were no permanent secretariat. And that's why you see later on, there were national implementation programs of AGOA. Yes, countries came up with their national implementation strategies. Because from 2000, when AGOA was put in place, there were no national programs. And how can you make advantage of such a unilateral market access where you don't debate the conditions? They just tell you, these are our conditions to enter our market. And that's why today you see US and Kenya are working towards a bilateral free trade agreement, because AGOA is ending in 2025, and countries believe that they have not met enough gains from AGOA. Some have done so, like Kenya, and that's why Kenya finds it interest to sign a bilateral trade deal, because the investments that came in through AGOA, if AGOA expires in 2025 and nothing is done, this investment might move to a different country. So to preserve it, Kenya has engaged in a bilateral trade agreement with the United States of America. But countries have made a lot of progress. When you look at in West Africa, there is an animal market that was put in place by the AGOA program, wherein animal rearers come together to sell their products. That market was developed through the AGOA program by the West African Trade and Investment Hubs. They are cereal producers. Their capacity has been enhanced. In Ghana, fruit producers, you must not sell to America. This program was intended to build our capacity and integrate our markets. You must not sell to America under AGOA. They can develop your capacity, and when you have an internal demand, you need to satisfy it before now moving to export to the US. And that has worked in several countries. So let's not look at AGOA only on the export lane of it. Look at on the development of local capacities, the expansion of investment base. It has happened, and successes are there. When you read through the annual reports of AGOA, you find a lot of success stories, especially women, because there was an aspect, there was a program that was developed specifically for women, AWEP, African Women Entrepreneurship Programs. And during the annual conferences of AGOA, where partners meet, these women were given a place of priority to discuss their challenges with American partners and to be able to bring in contributions with the US aid, which is actually the agency that was working on the investment hubs program with Africa, to see how they can enhance. And I think a lot has been achieved in this domain.
All right. Today, when we talk trade in Africa, the main focus is the African Continental Free Trade Area. How can this scheme boost trade and investment in Africa at a time when Africa is being seen as the next major economic destination?
It's a milestone. The AfCFTA is a milestone in the integration agenda of the continent. In fact, most pessimists, when this program came up in 2012, were of the opinion that it can never happen, at least so soon. But let me assure you, it took about 1 year from the 21st of March 2018 in Kigali to the 21st of March 2019. Ratification was historic and unprecedented in Africa. It shows the level of engagement. Africa wants to trade with Africa. Remember, the inter-African trade rate today stands at about 17%, which is lowest in terms of regional trade across the globe, compared to EU, Mercosur, and Asian countries.
Asian countries.
Yes. So Africans are beginning to realize that due to hindrances to trade with the Western world and other advanced partners, it is important we trade among ourselves. And this 17%, be mindful, it takes into consideration formal trade. A bulk of African trade takes place through informal trade. A woman who picks up her fruits in Edina and goes to sell in Nigeria, that data is not captured. But that's significant trade taking place. So the coming of the AfCFTA, and today 54 out of 55 African countries are on board. They have signed on to the agreement, and 30 have ratified, including Cameroon. And 6 out of 7 members of CEMAC have ratified. It shows the commitment and engagement of the continent. And this is a market of 1.3 billion compared to China and India coming together to harmonize their policies on trade in goods, trade in services, investment, intellectual property, competition policy, and even the regulatory system. What else would investors want to have other than these harmonized policies on a vast continent like Africa, with a rising social class? The middle class is growing in Africa. Africa's consumption habit is the fastest growing in the world. So today, we have everything to tell investors that come to Africa and do business.
Yeah, you say 54 out of 55 African countries have keyed into the agreement, but how difficult was it, knowing fully well that the various economic blocs have their different policies? It must have been a very, very stiff process.
You'll be surprised. If I tell you it was difficult, no, it wasn't difficult. The foundation stone had been laid in 1981 with the Lagos Plan of Action.
Lagos Plan of Action. That
was put in place. And later on in 1994 with the Abuja Treaty that laid down the foundation for regional economic communities. These regional economic communities are the building blocks. The AfCFTA has not started from nowhere. There is an expression that has been used by the agreement, the preservation of the acquis, which means we acknowledge what has been existing and we build on it. And that is where the problem was solved. They did not go into individual countries, they work with blocks. The 8 blocks, regional economic community blocks on the continent recognized by the African Union. And the deal was done.
But how difficult was it knowing that, for example, the SADC, where South Africa is more open, where and Ethiopia, which is more conservative, was that not a major challenge?
It wasn't a major challenge.
Wow.
Yes, it wasn't a major challenge because rather than looking at South Africa, it is of their interest to champion such an agreement. When you look at intra-African trade, South Africa is the highest importer and the highest exporter on the continent. And SACU, Southern Africa Custom Union, which is the oldest in the world, 1910, created in 1910, is the most integrated economic bloc and the most advanced into a custom union on the continent. So the benefits through incorporating other economies into a system where you are the leader was of South African advantage. Some might ask, okay, Nigeria, which is a giant economy, and exporting a lot, and also importing on the continent, why didn't they follow the example of South Africa? South Africa has been the first economy for quite a very long time before Nigeria took off to present. So it is, African countries, in fact, they were tired of signing agreements with the outside world rather than dealing with itself. And when you look at an agreement that integrates Africa itself, the highest beneficiary are the poor people.
Poor people.
Perfect. They are the poor people. A farmer in my village will easily carry his or her bunch of plantains and cross over to Nigeria to sell. And if the conditions are better today through the AfCFTA, it is only to their advantage to permit them have more resources to cater for their health, education. So it wasn't really a challenge. And the approach, I repeat, the preservation of the acquis, what Africa has achieved. And remember, in the Abuja Treaty, the negotiation forum considered that this regional economic community had achieved a certain level of integration on the 7 ladders of integration. A free trade area, custom union, an economic community, a common market. They accepted that we have, because if you wanted to look individually, problems could have arisen.
To come up.
Yes, and the countries decided, that the negotiating forum decided that we accept that everybody now is at the same level of regional integration because a time frame was given. There was a timeline that countries had to respect. So you have no reason to come today and say, no, I cannot integrate. However, there were problems, but the problems were more of technical rather than political. There were technical problems that were raised during the negotiation. And today, one of the major problems that is still unresolved is who is trading with who under the AfCFTA? Is ECAS trading with ECOWAS? Is ECAS trading with COMESA? Is COMESA trading with EAC? That is still the problem that's unresolved today. Or is Africa just generally trading with itself? And now we come back to the problem of sovereignty. I might want to do, Egypt has given 100% concession. If you give them 100% market entry.
Market entry as well.
They say they are open. Give me 100% market entry, I give you 100% market entry. But as of now, the negotiating forum has tabled on 90% tariff liberalization. That means on your global trade, when you go into your tariff book, you must liberate 90% contributed as stipulated by Article 24 of the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, GATT 94. For you to go out of the World Trade Organization trading system and grant preferential trading access amongst yourself, there must be considerable trade liberalization amongst yourself. And the considerable aspect of it is 90%. Africa has agreed on an initial liberalization of 90%. The remaining 10% has been structured into two groups. You have the sensitive product and the list of exclusion. Sensitive product will take into consideration 7% and list of exclusion 3%. You make up 100% trade. And some of the products in the sensitive list are products that generate a lot of revenue to countries, like cement clinker. Countries will say, please give us some time, but this must be liberated over a certain period of time, 13 years for others and 10 years for others. You will not keep the list of exclusion of 7% definite. There are reviews. And as you are developing your industries locally to generate revenue through the internal tax system, fiscal system, you now liberate the 7%. And there's the list of exclusion like arms, agriculture for food self-sufficiency. When they say exclusion, it means that this list is, we are not discussing it. But again, the agreement has provided for a forum in which we can review it over a longer period of time. So this is Africa moving forward. And this is the AfCFTA.
Now, at the implementation level in a country like Cameroon, what are the challenges and perspectives?
Definitely, there are challenges. The challenges are that our private sector, they will always tell you we don't have access to finance our investments. We don't have guarantee on land. The labor is not there. Today we are talking about the fourth industrial revolution, technology. When you look at the role of technology in the production of goods and services today, it is the future. How many Cameroonians are there? If an investor is coming with, say, 70% labor, technological labor. Those are some of the challenges. Our production capacity, energy. Energy is another problem. The rule of law. Access to land. Those are some of the challenges businesses are facing in order to prepare themselves ahead of the African Continental Free Trade Area. But however, it is a call for the private sector to rethink their strategy. We can't remain out of the moving train. We are engaging. And one of the major challenges that was raised during the consultative meeting is that the private sector said they were not consulted enough. They did not give their input enough. And it's a recommendation for government. Civil servants don't negotiate trade deals by themselves. They play the role of light. They take ideas from the dark, they put it on the light and carry it forward. Stakeholder engagement is key in trade negotiation. If you don't do that, you're killing your industrial sector. And most often, the best approach to me is that you do a call for submission. Make an announcement, do a call for submission. Identify stakeholders. When you do a call for submission, ask a vast variety of stakeholders to send in their submission, their positions. Musicians will send in theirs. Engineers and architect business services will send in theirs. And in fact, a wide variety of sectors will bring in their points. And you sit down now in a committee at the national level, do your consultation. Prepare now a package and carry forward. Now the government carry forward with technocrats. Because when we are negotiating a trade deal, there are a lot of technical aspects. Custom cooperation, phytosanitary aspect, technical barriers to trade, non-tariff barriers, a lot of things. And you need people on the ground who are facing the challenges on a daily basis to bring in their contributions. But it's a good deal. It's a good deal. It's a good deal, and we are moving forward. Already, Cameroon is already having a national strategy that's been put in place. That is the way forward. There are structures that will be put in place. There are partners that are coming in to work with Cameroon. The United Nations Economic Commission Sub-Regional Bureau for Central Africa is working with Cameroon in order to build a stronger national strategy.
And where does industrialization play in all this?
Key. Capital. I think there have been consultations between the Ministry of Industry and the United Nations Economic Commission to review our industrial master plan. And that review is taking into consideration new developments like the African Continental Free Trade Area. And when you look at the strategy document for growth and employment, industrial development is key. We can't engage in such a free trade agreement without having a robust master plan for industrial development. And when you look at the role of the Investment Promotion Agency, most often they always make announcement of the level of investments they have captured into the economy. You need to look at the sectors in which these investments are being channeled. A lot is being done. I think Cameroon is definitely getting ready for its border, especially as a key economy in the sub-region, in the CEMAC sub-region.
Yeah, the head of state earlier this week created the ports authorities of Limbe and Kribi, and the inauguration was just a few days ago. Let's look at the situation of Limbe. What could be the niche markets and potentials of such a port?
Limbe Port Authority can play a vital role as a transshipment port. When you look at Nigeria with 200 million consumers and 2 ports, Apapa, Lagos, and Port Harcourt, serving Nigeria, you understand, even if Nigeria has to develop 2 more ports, Limbe Port, if it is well structured, like the case of Singapore, as essentially a transshipment port, it will capture a lot of cargo. And the target should be Nigeria. We shouldn't beat about the bush. We should be building that port. Our market study should be Nigeria. And when you look at Apapa and Port Harcourt, and you look at land transport beyond the port logistics, those are issues we can work on. It's a complex one in Nigeria. When you look at the number of controls moving from the port to, say, like Adamawa in Nigeria, I think Cameroon can work on such aspects. And the Limbe port will be able to serve its purpose. We have a vast land and maritime border with Nigeria. Even if the Limbe port is constructed to carry cargo from Limbe through Adamawa in Cameroon to serve Adamawa in Nigeria, or Maiduguri in the northern part, we'll be making a huge profitable investment.
Okay, some experts say that trade agreements affect gender, men and women, differently. Yeah. How feasible is this? How do trade agreements affect men and women differently, and what can be done to solve the shortcomings? Yeah,
trade and gender issues are an important aspect of deep trade agreements today. What is being negotiated in a trade agreement? There are concessions. They are opening up a market. I mean, goods and services are to be exchanged. What sectors are you opening up will affect men and women differently. Let me take the case of agricultural sector. When you take the case of agricultural sector, like CDC, or let me take the tea sector, for example, in Cameroon. When you go to the tea production unit in Tole, most of those harvesting tea are women. Those drying are women. And as you move up the hierarchy ladder, women become lesser and lesser, and to the top management they don't exist. If you're opening up the agricultural sector for trade liberalization in a free trade agreement, the tendency is that this sector, which is labor intensive, will tend to use machinery and kick out labor.
Which means women will be left out of it.
They will be left out of it. And when you look at those women working there, the possibility of them moving into a new sector is minimal. When you look at their training, they don't have any formal training. So now how do you expect them to move into, to have job mobility? Virtually zero, they will come back home. And most of them are mothers, single mothers. They have children to raise, to educate, to take to the hospital, to nourish. So the impact of free trade agreement on agricultural sector will touch more women than men. Look at the fishery sector, where you're opening up fish. Go to Limbe. Look at the number of women involved in fish value chain. The drying, when you go down to Limbe at the beach, you see mostly women are involved in the drying process and selling. If this sector is open up for competition from outside economies, definitely women are going to leave. And the impact on the family and beyond is not the same as men. When you go now into sectors like architecture and engineering, you find more men than women. So these are the sectors when we are negotiating free trade agreement, you consider gender issues. Especially knowing that technology also is on the rise and will affect those sectors. Yeah. So those are the aspects that must be considered where we are negotiating free trade areas. They are capital intensive and they are labor intensive sectors. And most often than not, in Africa as well as Asia, labor intensive domains like the textile industry, where you go into a textile industry employing more than 1,000 persons, you realize that about 800 are women. Yeah. So those are sectors when you're negotiating free trade agreements, you consider them on gender basis. All right, Mr. Bama Etienne Cham, thank you very much. Thank you. Like I said, it was a big pleasure to have you on the program. And we shall call you some other time when we have issues to discuss. Thank you very much. And to you televiewers, it was a pleasure being with you on this edition of Hard Talk. Until next time, bye-bye.